Díomh go léir chuirde agus fáilte isteach. Hello everyone and welcome into this month's Agil of Buil, or our member interview. This is our series that we do monthly on Bite Size, myself and Neil. Talk to members, grow and explore members from Bite Size, and this month I am joined by Marian. Marian, cúna sa tátu?
Oh, time go mahagata Emma, agus túsa?
Tá go maith, gur míle maith agat. So Marian is a Grow member and she's been with us just over 6 months now. And I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more about her personally and, of course, her Irish language journey. So I'm going to ask Marian to introduce herself, firstly as Gaeilge and then as Béarla, or in English, and we'll go from there. So Marian, Inish doing food féin.
Cacalo. Is Miss Marian, is Sassanach me, to me Mahoney, Conte Shropshire, in a Keleshan Vetonberg. E Schroedweiler Berg, to sé aanhuin Frintoth, to me poster, to mac agus sinian agam, agus bet clan clena, freshen, to me esco, is fedelom sul gachlor agus banim tatnif vas leaf, agus paintoil. A cochacht, garadoriacht. Ba muntje me, ta came Alina agam of the moon at Béarla do forsti dohan gaha. To se me ag fálim goelga twi bliana a hin.
Anna fad. Anna, agus for the non-Irish speakers, can you transcribe that into English for us, or translate it into English?
Well, I'm Marian, English, living in England. I live in the West Midlands, I'll add that, of England towards Wales in County Shropshire, in a very small rural village, very quiet. I'm married with 2 grown-up children, son and a daughter, and 2 grandchildren. I'm retired now, so I can go walking every day. I can read, garden, cook. However, I had my first degree was in art, but I found myself teaching English to bilingual learners, and I myself began learning Irish 3 years ago or so.
Very interesting. There's a couple of things I want to ask following up on your introduction. I don't even know where to start, but I suppose what I'll start with is what I ask everyone is, what was your first experience with the Irish language?
Well, I have really to blame my daughter in a roundabout way, because I knew nothing of Ireland or the language apart from enjoying Gael Tradicionta, some Irish music. But she was completing studies in Newcastle and a bit of a loose end, and a young vet who'd finished his studies, qualified in County Cork from an Irish farming family, came into her life in Newcastle. It's so, it's so serendipitous. And she, in due course, went over to Ireland with him, found a job there. And of course, we started visiting. And then I started to observe road signs and dual language names, bilingual place names. I puzzled over these consonant clusters and how on earth you got the English from that Irish. And I wanted to learn it. Nothing happened for a long time. I had looked at 1 or 2 books and thought it didn't look that easy. I was doing some Spanish with Duolingo, and we were over there some years later. The children had started school, so this is 7 or 8 years later, and Rachel was learning Irish at school, and I suddenly thought, well, can you do Irish on Duolingo? And sure enough, that was the way in, really. I started, this was COVID, just at the, and COVID began just after this, so we didn't go over there for a bit. But there was plenty of time. So that became my lockdown project, learning Irish, which was with Duolingo for a while, as with many of us. Another course I did, Future Learn with DCU, and then I found Bite Size. And the huge difference was that, having never spoken a word in Irish, had no idea how to pronounce it still after, even quite a while trying to work at it, suddenly there was the opportunity to learn the pronunciation and
Wow.
get the opportunity to speak
Wow.
it.
Really
So
interesting. It just almost, it was by chance that it happened. You didn't go out looking to learn a new language, or because when you said that you live close to Wales, I thought, well, perhaps you had an interest in Celtic languages. You might have come in contact with Welsh. Why not Welsh, and why Irish? But yeah, it came through your daughter, and now you can pursue that while having the opportunity to go over and visit and maybe put it into practice.
yes, we haven't been so much recently for a couple of, obviously COVID got in the way, and some other issues. But we were there last year, and I think, in fact, it was the year before that I first found the opportunity to use it. My daughter and her family live in Macroom, which is almost in a Gaeltacht area. Ballyvaughan is Gaeltacht up the road, and I found a bookshop, a second-hand bookshop along a little back alley in Macroom. He opens a couple of days a week. And I went in and I took the plunge and spoke to him in Irish and asked if he had any Irish books, which he did have one or two, surprisingly. And he was ever so nice. I tried also in another, a little shop somewhere, and much to the shopkeeper's amusement, I spoke a bit of Irish there, and I have tried a few times. And last year, when we were on Dingle, I gave it 3 goes, and one, quite a funny response from one Irish elderly man who said, "Oh, Irish have never done me any good. I don't know why you learn Irish from." They've got a whole tirade about why on earth you're learning Irish, but 2 other more helpful people. So
that's a really good story to have, that you actually have the comparison of the good experience and the bad experience. But what I love to hear is that you assert yourself with Irish and you try it. And I think that's 50% of the battle, that you just go for it. The worst thing that can happen is someone says, "Oh, I don't speak Irish," blah, 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 and you'll get that everywhere. It doesn't matter where you are in Ireland. There'll be varying opinions on the language, and that, for me, that pushes me more to speak to more people to try and get more positive than negative reviews or reactions from people. Although, how negative can they be at the same time? You won't be killed. You won't get in a fight anyway. So, my other question then would be, as a teacher yourself, how has that, I suppose, how have you approached learning the language? Has that helped you in any way? The fact that you were teaching people English, and it wouldn't have been their first language, has that helped you? Do you have any tips? Do you have anything that you practice yourself, or has it been no good?
Yeah, again, by chance, I found myself working with bilingual children who, going back 20 years when I started doing this, they were families who traditionally, they'd come to the West Midlands conurbation area following the Second World War, and grandparents and parents had been to these schools, but the children, however, speak their own language at home, which might be Urdu, but there are also children from the northwest frontier province of Pakistan who spoke Pashto, and who come into school with no English at all. And I found lots of ways of working with those, working with games, with role play, with turn taking, with all sorts of things to give repetition, with picture books, which any child learning to read in English, you can begin with picture books where you get the child talking. Maybe the child won't want to talk for some months, even a couple of years. But this is again something to work with the teachers, that in fact children will take very different lengths of time depending on confidence. That if you can find just key into that child's learning style, whether it's through pictures or music or games or what. So there are similarities for adults in that we've all got our own way of learning, though of course we bring all our maturity to perhaps doing things in a very much more academic way, which is necessarily well, it's not how you originally learn language, is it? Let's face it, everyone learns through hearing, and probably most of the world learns additional languages through listening. Though we, as sort of Western Europeans growing up in our academic culture, tend to learn languages much more literate way, which I find what I do find hard myself is I find the speaking hard, I find the listening hard. I'm not a natural linguist, but again, another point is through my son, who again I would say is not a natural linguist, but he was in our house with a Spanish girlfriend, and they were holding a conversation. And I thought, this is the boy who scraped through one language and failed another one and took no interest whatsoever. So motivation is everything, isn't it? Motivation and, again, interaction with other learners.
Yeah, and going back to how, as adults, we're learning new languages, and that's not how you learn as a child. I even find vocabulary when I start teaching my students in the university here, we miss out on certain vocabulary. We go a year and then I realize they don't know what this animal is, or what this color is, or what this shape is. And even myself with German, when I started in school, I was 13, and you're always heading towards exams and all these tests. And when it came to it, I after years, I didn't know shapes, or I didn't know this, that, and the other thing, the basics that a child would know. So I kind of make a point every now and again to refer back and kind of do a mini lesson on, animals or colors, and the vocabulary that might not necessarily come in every day, but it's also, you never know where it might pop up, or you go back to how children learn and what children learn when they're starting out. And this is why music and poems and rhymes and things like that, they do help you in the repetition side of it, as well as, being a little bit different than just reading a book for an hour and that. So I think we all need to tap into our inner child sometimes and go back to, well, how did we do this in school, and what were we learning here and there, and when we were learning how to speak in general, whatever our mother tongue was. Very interesting. I want to then ask you about your motivation. You say your motivation is, whatever your motivation might be. What is your motivation? Where do you see, what's your goal maybe? And do your grandchildren play a part in that now?
Well, they do. Yes, I like to encourage my grandchildren to things by showing an interest in what they do. So it isn't just one of those things you've got to do at school. I would love to reach a point where I can actually have some sort of conversation. I'm nowhere near that really yet in Irish. I want to be able to read it, but the reading is, for me, probably the easier part. Of course, there's lots of vocabulary I haven't got. Of course, I still find it difficult, but it is the speaking that I feel is the challenge, and the listening, and that I would like to be able to do. So, yes, I do think it's important for them. My son-in-law, in fact, was somewhat sceptical about the whole idea of children spending so much time on language. But my point about that is, well, you must learn. I think it's essential to learn another language for your whole brain development. And what do you choose? I spent years learning French at school. Yes, we had some holidays there, but maybe I could have wanted a job in Germany like you. Or one doesn't know what language is going to be the most appropriate. So begin with the language that's part of your culture, that is your heritage. Begin with Irish if you're Irish.
I could have said it better myself, Marian. Well done. Yeah,
I'm not sure if I've answered your question. I'm not sure where we began, but yes.
No, you did. No, I 100% agree with you, because even, I started speaking Irish when I was 4, and okay, we didn't know where that would take me, whether it was a job at the end of it. But even so, when I started learning German in secondary school, unconsciously, my knowledge of Irish helped me, because I could understand a different grammar structure. Although Irish grammar structure isn't the same as German grammar structure, it opens up your mind as a child, especially. You don't even realize that you know it. And now, teaching Irish and having German, I'm finding more similarities. I've talked about this before. Sometimes it's easier to explain to my native German speaker students a phrase or a grammar concept, because it's closer to German than it is in English. So I don't think it can do you any harm in learning more languages. I don't think it's going to make you any stupider. It's going to only benefit you in whatever way, be it in a job or culturally, or even just your development in general, or your understanding of the world around you. So, and how people communicate, and how, the other people view the world through their language. So I 100% agree with you. And I suppose going back then to your goal, and talking about then where you're with us 6 months, and before you said, before you started with Bite Size, you mentioned that you couldn't really speak the language, or you could read it on the apps, and you could do the online courses. Where were you then, and I suppose where are you now in terms of using our online community, Pubble, and speaking with other members and having that community? I know you joined the online calls, you joined my monthly reading call. How has that helped you, and where are you now?
Oh, it's helped enormously with the speaking, with getting a grasp of the pronunciation. I find the Ben's weekly course, where I go through the script in advance a couple of times, at least, probably more it was to start with, going through it slowly, reading in with it, jotting down a few notes underneath where I need a reminder of pronunciation. So that's really helped me on. And also with yours, the monthly one, where it's spontaneous, we haven't got the script in advance. You're finding us a book and we're having our go at reading it, which is huge fun. I love doing that. And the group of us, we have probably from, what are there, perhaps about 20 or so people who are reasonably regularly online. So one's really gotten several people there almost every week. So there is a community there. One gets to know a little bit about everybody. It's interests me, the diversity of where people come from. A number of American and Canadians, hardly anyone originally from England. 1 or 2 live in England, 1 or 2 German. There's a German lady, what's her name? I've forgotten her name now, but she's
Antje is there,
who says that she actually learns Irish through English, which to me is quite extraordinary, to be sort of using a second language to be learning a third, possibly more than that. There's is it Anya, the Russian lady, who knows a number of languages. I find people's capacity for language learning quite amazing. I mean, I'll never be like that, but if I do get to feel that I can start to think in Irish a little, I feel I was getting somewhere.
Yeah, and I agree, the community feeling there. And this is why I like doing these interviews as well, because I'm on there daily and I speak to everyone. I'm replying to you. We're having a chat. I'm correcting you. You're asking questions. I meet everyone monthly. But we're down to business in our calls. We're reading, and I'm answering questions, or I'm explaining things. So I really like to get to know the members through these interviews and videos as well, because we get a little bit of a deeper insight, and then everyone in turn can watch this interview or listen to this interview and get to know you a little bit more, maybe continue the conversation then in the comments or on Pubble or whatever it may be. So I want to then say as well, since you've been coming to my monthly calls, I've seen a great improvement in your reading skills. So it is definitely helping. And I know some people think, oh, I'm not getting any better. I'm not pointing fingers at you, Marian. I'm just saying in general, people might feel maybe stagnant in their learning or in their progress because they're not seeing anything physical. But I can see it. And I can see when people are writing on the daily, or if they come in weekly and write something for one of my daily prompts, I can see an improvement in grammar, in vocabulary use. People are learning from each other as well. So I do agree that it helps to spur, it pushes you as well to learn from each other and, want to continue a conversation in Irish and ask more questions.
Yes, I didn't mention that your daily tasks are almost daily. I really enjoy those. I don't always do them. Sometimes I look at them and read them and don't get round to actually replying, but I'm nearly always looking at them, and also your corrections. So all of that makes it feel it's much more interactive. Some of the news pieces that have the Gaelga subtitles, I find that very good too. So you can listen and read the subtitles, which is much more useful to read it in Irish than in English, because you haven't got one-to-one correspondence in English. You want to read it in Irish.
That's the thing, and it's sometimes difficult to actually find clips that have Irish
Yeah.
subtitles underneath them. TG Cahir sometimes choose to give you Irish subtitles, sometimes there's only English subtitles. I wish there was both options. It would be great. But yeah, I do agree, having reading and listening at the same time is a great way to connect the letters and the words with the sounds themselves. So my last question then, Marian, I suppose it's the two-part question, right? Part one is, what has been your favorite part about learning Irish this far, or until now? And the second part really has nothing to do, so maybe it is two questions. But do you have any advice for anyone who, like you, who might want to start learning Irish, or has visited Ireland and thought, what are the same kind of idea as you, and advice?
Having found Bite Size, I'd say start with that. I mean, in my own case, finding Duolingo, I found it really quite exciting to find this extraordinarily differently structured language that I was, beginning to get the hang of some of. I wrote absolutely everything down then, and it did then have some notes you could look at, but nothing like the amount of help that you get from Bite Size. So really, I would say it's you might run Duolingo alongside Bite Size, but I'm not just giving a big plug for you. I genuinely feel it. You deserve the plug. I wouldn't be here otherwise. So yes, I would say start. It's exciting even if you don't keep it up. But in my case, I certainly absolutely sort of hooked on it now.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and you've progressed well, and I'm excited to see where you are in another 6 months. So by the end of the year, who knows, you might have that conversation as Gaeilge. You're getting there anyway. So gur míle maith agat, Marian, and I want to say to everyone listening or watching, leave a comment if you want to continue the conversation. If you're in a similar situation to Marian, or anything here has resonated with you, we're more than happy to read and reply and continue the conversation, as I've said already. So míle buíochas, and we'll see you again next month for our next members interview. So slán go fóill.
Slán go fóill, Emma. Go maith agat.
Your Grow Irish Language journey is waiting for you at Bite Size Irish. Sign up today for Grow membership at signup.irish.